Do you know what?
What?
Do you know what?
What?
It's time for episode 12 of the Really Useful Podcast, where we're going to be taking a look at Percy the Small Engine. Oh,
Oh.
that's
For
enough of the
a second there, I thought you were trying to imitate like a parrot or something. For a second there, I thought you were trying to be potty or something.
Oh, no, I wasn't. I was just imitating Willie Rustin's Percy. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Really Useful Podcast. I'm your host, Bonnie, also known as Old Teapot7. I'm here with my co-host.
Sakura the Diesel, everybody. And to be fair, I did not know Willie Rushton made Percy sound like Mickey Mouse.
That was just my interpretation of how he made him sound, but, you know. Anyways, today we got a very big episode for you guys. We're going to be taking a look at possibly, I think this is the final book of the original 7.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, in a way, this is the final book for at least, for basically a certain artist that we have been following all throughout season 1 and everything, which is, Percy the Small Engine, which, again, as you guys know, this is basically the last book in which, C. Reginald Dalby, ever illustrated for the Railway series before basically he quit.
Pretty much. And I should let you guys know by now that the reason I sound a little weird is because I caught a cold, and I'm still slowly recovering from it, but it's not that big of a deal. So if you guys hear me with kind of like
basically, if you guys hear Bonnie coughing and everything, don't worry, he's not dying. He's still alive.
no, it's just a small cold I got.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, this is the final book that was illustrated by C. Reginald Dalby, and there is a reason why he quit.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because of the Percy incident, but there was something else that happened that kind of led tensions between Wilbert and Dalby to boil over. So what happened was that originally Edmund Ward's offices were Leicestershire, where C. Reginald Dalby resided, and in 1955 they moved out of the area into a new location, and so they had to basically discuss matters via letters. So that kind of made tensions between Wilbert and Dalby even worse. So if Wilbert had a complaint about Dalby's illustrations, then he had to send them by letter. And unfortunately, that kind of soured their relationship pretty quickly when it came to this book.
Don't you hate those kind of breakups where it's like, or basically like, instead of telling it to your face, they have to tell you via by letter. That's the worst.
Yes, and actually, I do have what C. Reginald Dalby wrote, because so for the ones that don't know,
dear Wilbur Audrey and everything, fuck you, I quit. Here's your green caterpillar with red stripes.
So for the ones that don't know, C. Reginald Dalby was writing an autobiography of his own. That was never published. It was going to be titled "Me: The Odyssey of a Nobody."
Well, I mean, at least he's honest about himself.
Yes, and actually, 1 second here. You might have to cut this out when we edit the episode.
All right.
But I actually have here what he wrote in his autobiography when tensions between him and Wilbur boiled over. Here it is.
All right, let's take a look.
I was sorry to give up, as I had become intimately involved with my engines, their characters, and their personalities. But like that other famous artist, Adolf Hitler.
What? Wait, what?
My patience became exhausted. He just fucking compared himself to Adolf Hitler. That guy was.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. What? Alright. Well. What a twist, I guess. I mean, that was actually kind of a twist. I mean, out of all the other artists Dalby could have, referenced to, Basically he had to chose a person that killed a lot of people and everything. So
He basically compared himself to probably the worst human being to ever stand on this earth.
I mean, I guess you could say that maybe Dolby also views himself as the worst human being. I don't know.
I suppose so.
I mean, I guess it's a good thing the Island Sorter never really existed in the first place. I would hate to see what Dobby would do. I would hate to see what Dobby would do if he ever set foot on the Island Sorter. If he ever set foot in the Island Sorter, if he's basically comparing himself that way.
Yeah, yeah. This kind of shows that that Dolby didn't give a fuck about the series.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much.
He even said one time those books will die out in a couple of decades.
That I do remember. I do actually remember, basically, because I think we talked about this before, when we got to James the Red Engine and everything. Basically we introduced Steve Benson and Dolby, and basically we already showed that basically Dolby's feelings on both like Wilbur and the Railway series were always pretty much sour from the start and everything.
The reason why their relationship was quite sour is because Wilbur was kind of forced to accept Dolby because he originally was gonna illustrate James the Red Engine by himself.
Yes, I do remember that. Basically, he was originally gonna draw the engines, and then basically a friend of his was gonna draw basically gonna draw the backgrounds for the books and
And the
everything.
people, yeah, because he wasn't good at drawing people.
Yeah.
And basically, actually, what ended up happening was that Edmund Ward actually found C. Reginald Dalby, and when Wilbur submitted the illustrations, it was like, "Oh, don't worry, we don't need them. We got this other illustrator." And Wilbur was not very happy about that. So it was pretty clear that the relationship between Dalby and Audrey was kind of sour from the very beginning.
Yeah.
They did get along when they were not working on the series, but when it came to working on the series, yeah, tensions rose up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I will say that I don't blame Wilbur for saying that Percy looked like a great caterpillar with red stripes because I'll be honest with you, there are some illustrations where he does look like a fucking caterpillar with red stripes.
Honestly, basically, honestly, when reading the book again, for myself and everything, and take a look at the illustrations and everything, I could definitely see where basically Wilbur Audrey's criticism was coming from about Percy looking like a caterpillar and everything, there are some moments and everything where Percy, like Bonnie said, does actually look like a caterpillar. Basically, if you look real hard enough, he does actually look like a caterpillar.
Yes, and for this being Dalby's last book, I will say that at least he went out with a bang of sorts.
He did. There definitely were a couple of illustration moments and everything that actually did look really good. Especially with one story in particular. But we'll get to that story when we get to it.
So fun facts about this book that you guys probably might not know is that this book was originally going to be titled. Well, I'll just start from the beginning. Sorry. There was this kid that wrote to Wilbur. I think his name was Giles, according to the Thomas the Tank Engine Man.
Yes, and I believe, that he's also mentioned in the forward as well, along
Yes,
with
he's mentioned in the foreword.
yeah,
Yeah, and he wrote to Wilbur saying like, "Hey, can you write a book about Percy called Percy the Polite Engine with a story about Trevor?" And when the book was published, I'm looking at it right now in the book in Thomas the Tank Engine Man right now.
Alrighty.
When it was published in 1956, it came out as Percy the Small Engine, and unfortunately, Trevor did not make it into this book.
Yeah, so basically, the kid got his first little taste of somewhat disappointment.
To be honestly, because Trevor barely appears after book 9.
Pretty much. It was basically like we said, we're never gonna see Trevor again until we get to Chris's books.
Here it is. Yeah, because it says here because of course Percy's not even polite in this book.
Yeah, definitely not. Especially in the first two stories, he's not.
And here's what Clive wrote to Wilbur.
Okay.
We think Percy is very polite because he always says, "Yes, sir, please, sir." Clive was not alone. There were similar requests from a Christopher, a Giles, and a Peter, to whom, with Clive, the book's introductory letter would eventually be addressed. I'll read it for you.
All
All right.
right, let's go ahead.
Thank you for writing to ask for a book about Percy. He is still cheeky, and we were afraid, the Fact Controller and I, that if he had a book to himself, it might have made him cheekier than ever, and that would never do. But Percy has been such a really useful engine that we both think he deserves a book. Here it is.
Here it is. Just not knows Brad's happy birthday.
I knew you were gonna say that joke. I knew
well,
you were
well,
gonna.
well, 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 I mean, to be fair, at least it was still a better introduction than Gordon the Big Engine.
Yes.
Because, like I said, in Gordon the Big Engine, all it was just like, dear Ian, you wanted a book about Gordon? Here it is. Now shut up.
No, no. It's hey, dear you want a book about Gordon? Here you go.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, give me money.
At least this book kind of felt like a request, basically. Like, hey, can you write a book about Percy? Yeah,
Pretty
here you
much.
go.
Well, then again, so was like Gordon the Big Engine. Gordon the Big Engine was more or less like a request to write about.
Yes, pretty much, pretty much. So I think that's about it because the other fun facts I'm gonna wait until we get to the stories because there is one interesting fun fact I want to point out, but we'll get to that in one of the stories when we get to it.
Alrighty then.
So without further ado, let's get into the stories because I'm really excited for today's episode when it comes to the
Same
stories.
here, right? Same here. Since you went first last time with Scarlet Remembers, it's my turn to go first with Percy and the Single. So
Go
here
ahead.
we go.
Kick
All
it
right.
off.
Alrighty. So Percy and the Single starts off with a little more introduction to Percy and his characters. Basically, just in case if you forgot to read the other books in the series and everything, or basically if you're brain dead. Basically after the little introduction, we get to see Percy's cheeky side and everything. First, he plays a trick with Gordon by making him think that like he was late with the express and everything. Basically, in reality, Percy just showed him like a train of dirty coal trucks and everything. Then he played another trick on James as well too. Basically telling him to stay in the shed because the Fat Controller was going to come and see him. And with James being like all self-important and everything, and doesn't really fall. Basically, he does stay in the shed and everything, just like as Percy said.
He doesn't give a fuck and lets everybody do his work.
Pretty much, and pretty much the inspector comes here and just be like, James, you dumbass, the Fat Controller's away for a week. How could he give you a message? And James is just like, what the fuck? Where's that little green demon? And then basically after that, now both Gordon and James basically have a motive to want to pay Percy out and everything. So basically, they actually do something a little clever. Actually, they basically trick Percy into basically thinking that like there's backward singles and everything. And Percy, being naive and innocent and everything, basically actually falls for it and such. Because basically, when Percy takes trucks to Thomas's Junction and everything, he's stopped by a single and everything. And when a single moved the show line clear, the arm moved up instead of down. So Percy thought that was a backwards single, and he went backwards for a little bit. But then the driver stops him and basically lets him know that basically lets him know that Percy's an idiot and everything. Percy does feel like an idiot and basically wants to start, but Gordon saw everything. And then basically later on that night he gets basically Percy gets mocked and ridiculed for being a dumbass. End of story.
I should explain what the signal pointing up means. It's basically line clear in case you don't know about it.
Basically yeah and everything. So, but you know what? A little fun fact and everything. At least turns with me. Basically when I saw the episode a long time ago and in the TV series and everything too. Fun fact, I actually basically thought the same thing with Percy. Now, basically, what Singles pointed out, that means, Train has to go back, because, a long while ago, and this is going to show my age and everything, I used to have a PC game called Lionel Trains and everything, and basically in the game, there are singles and everything, where, basically if you work a single and everything, there's one part of the single where if the arm goes all the way up, then that tells the train that they had to go all the way back and everything. So basically I thought the same thing as well too. But no. Just like as Barney said, the single point said that also means that line clear and you can go and everything.
Yeah, because remember, railway regulation is different in the U.S. and in the U.K. Because we have different ways of working a railway here in the United States.
Yeah, yes we do and everything. So cultures, yay.
Yay.
Anyway, all right. So Percy the Single, this is actually a really good introduction to the book and everything. But basically, this story serves as like a really good introduction to basically Percy, because like I said, Percy, because like we said and everything, Percy hasn't had a story to himself in a long time and everything.
Yeah, in about 5 years.
Basically, it was Henry the Green Engine, where basically he had that story all to himself with Percy in the trousers
Which that's
and such.
which I said it once and I'll say it again. What the fuck is that doing in that book? We don't know, but we ranted about it in season 1. Then I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah. So basically, if you guys want our rants on Percy and the Trousers, you can basically go watch that episode on Henry the Green Engine. But yeah, going back to like the story and everything, like I said, the story does also serve as a good reminder about like who Percy is and everything. Not only to like past readers and everything that basically like I said that basically hasn't seen Percy in a while. But it also serves as a good introduction to new readers to the Railway series and everything. To basically get like another introduction to Percy and such, and who he really is as a character. And basically, Wilbur Audrey really shows off, Percy's cheeky nature really well. It basically all just like 1 or 2 pages and everything. Basically, a little joke he pulled with Gordon. Was actually pretty funny. Especially the same thing with James as well too. Like basically the whole scene with James. With James basically staying in the shed because Percy tricked him that like the Fat Controller's gonna come and see him.
It's still pretty funny to this day.
This is still pretty funny, and I basically love how the TV series basically also does it in their adaptation, which is basically showing a montage of basically all the answers doing James's work too.
That's my favorite scene from the story and the episode. James doing nothing.
Pretty much.
Shame it didn't last very long because I was laughing my ass off the last time I saw that episode.
Can you imagine that was just a whole story and everything, just James doing nothing for like a whole week until like the Fat Controller actually does come in.
If that was the case, if that was the case, I probably just would have burst out laughing.
It'd just be like it'd just be like one of that montage of like SpongeBob or something, where just basically like the sun just sets, it just basically sets and rises like a clock and such.
Or like in Rocket Bible that a phew rough day.
Yeah.
Awesome. Remember, you gotta pull my train tomorrow. Tomato.
I'll do that later. I'm still waiting for the Fat Controller.
Tomato for sure.
And then basically Edward comes out and just be like, James, I don't know how to tell you this, but the Fat Controller's dead. And everything. Real quick. Actually, speaking of the Fat Controller, because the Railway Series book club actually pointed this out, in like Edward the Blue Engine, but correct me if I'm wrong. Which book was it when Charles started taking over in terms of like operating a railway? Was it Edward the Blue Engine or was it this book?
It was in. Hold on a second. I'm trying to think from the top of my head.
Because
He retired. He retired in 1954.
1954. Okay. Then yeah. Going by that logic, I think this is the book where like
Charles takes over. Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one where Charles takes over. And one of his first jobs as controller is to prepare the new harbor. But we'll get to that in the next story.
Yes, pretty much and such. So yeah, I don't have too much to say on the story and everything, like, cause like I said, this is a really good introduction to basically Percy himself as a character and everything. Basically, what I also like that Wilbur Audrey does and everything is that like basically find the right balance of like showing Percy's cheeky side. But also showing like a little fun, a little kid innocent kind of side as well too. Because basically, like what sets Percy a little different from Thomas is that basically that like both engines are cheeky and such. But when Thomas is being cheeky and everything, he has like a little bit of rudeness to it and everything. Basically acting like he's better than everyone else. But basically when Percy's being cheeky, he's not really doing it to be rude and such. Basically Percy's cheekiness comes. Just basically comes with the fact that like he just more wants to have fun like a little kid and everything. Because like I said, Percy's cheekiness is just more that like he's doing it for fun. He's not really doing it to be rude. It's just like there are some moments where like he does take his cheekiness a little bit too far and such, and basically like the narrator says, it does land him into trouble and such.
Yeah, but it's all for fun at the end of the day.
Yeah. but I will say there's similarity to Thomas in a sort of way. Well, I guess not more for Thomas. I guess you could argue just more like any entrance that get teased. But it's just one of those was like Percy doesn't mind if he's the one doing the teasing. But basically, if you tease Percy and everything, he just kind of like fuck you.
What? Oh, I just remember something that I think everybody in the fandom knows this, but I'll say it.
Go ahead.
This is the episode where James's face is almost falling off.
That's yeah, but that's more so in the TV series. That's not as much as the illustration. Although,
I was yeah, I said it in the episode. Yeah, in the episode. That's the infamous episode where James's face is kind of falling off, and I don't know how that made it into the final cut because wow, that was so bad.
And then another thing I also do love is it's just basically the payback that like Gordon and James did to Percy. Basically that little payback they did to them was actually really clever of them too. It's probably one of the few paybacks as well too, where it's basically innocent enough to where like it won't get Gordon and James into major trouble or anything. So
They're playing it safe, in other words.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I really have to say in terms of this story and everything. Like I said, it's a really good, story. It's a really great introduction to again Percy himself as a character. Full of good laughs too. Full of good laughs. Real good illustrations as well. That let's see, what rating do I want to give this?
Shall we talk about the narrators because we forgot because
if sure, why not? You can go ahead and start off with the narrators real quick if you like.
Okay, so if you've been following us with the previous episodes, and if you haven't, why are you watching this? Go back and watch the previous episodes. You may know that I was very harsh to Johnny Morris, especially on his narration of Old Faithful. That was unbearable.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, his narrations for this book, they weren't that bad actually. I would say they were great at best.
Yeah, same here. Me personally, I wouldn't say it was the best, but I definitely will say they were improvements, definitely massive improvements.
Massive improvements, but still they don't match the same type of energy that he had in books 1 through 8.
Yeah.
But for this story, I think he did a pretty good job with this book.
He did.
Definitely nowhere near as Rushton, but
Yeah.
Because I love the way Rushton voices Percy like, "Hurry up, Gordon, try its life." Kind of makes it sound like Mickey Mouse, and you're right.
No. But yeah. So going to my rating real quick. My rating for Percy in a single. You know what? I'm gonna give it a 9. Like I said, this book is a really great introduction to the story and everything, and basically anytime I read the story and everything, it's real good. It's still got lots of good laughs and it shows Percy off real greatly as a character.
All right. Well, as for me, this story is flawless. Like it's perfect from beginning to end. Percy is a big jokester that takes its jokes a little too far. He tricks Gordon into taking the express, and it's really funny. My favorite part of the story is where he tells James to stay in the shed, and James does absolutely nothing. To this day, I come back to this book just because of that scene alone, and also part of the story, I should say. And I also love the joke that Gordon and James played on Percy, especially when he thinks that he has to go back. I just find that kind of hilarious. Like, down means go, and up means stop. So up or still must mean go back. I know. It's one of those backing signals. How clever of me to find out. Wilbur could have not put in that better.
Pretty much.
That line is pure gold right there. And I don't have too much to say on this story because I think you nailed everything I was going to say about this story. So for me, this story for me is a fucking 10.
Woo! Alrighty. Alright, so 9 for me and 10 for you. 10, right away, you're giving the story a 10 right off the bat and everything.
Yeah, this is a rarity because you guys know that I rarely give 10.
I think the only time we ever gave, so far in the series, the only time we ever gave any book a solid 10 all the ways, I think it was Thomas the Tank Engine.
But we can't argue with that book because that book is perfect from beginning to end.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think after that, the only story I gave a 10 to, if I'm not mistaken, was Off the Rails because I laughed so hard at that
Yes,
story.
and I think
Sir
I think
Handel.
yes, it was Sir Handel, and I think you also gave a 10 for Old Iron as well.
I think I did, yes.
Yes. Alright, alright. Then well, alright. Then well, so far, alright. Then well, so far, it seems to be like a running theme in that, like, pretty much, almost every story, almost at least one story in every book is getting a 10. So let's see if that trend will keep up in this season.
Fingers crossed, guys. We shall see.
We shall see. Alright then, man. You're up next with Duck Takes Charge.
All right, Duck takes charge. So Duck takes charge begins with Percy, Gordon, and James at the shed. I think this takes place after the signal incident. So Percy's excited and tells the other engines that the Sir Topham Hatt's getting a new engine to help work in the yard. And basically, the news is not well received by James and Gordon. And basically, it's like rubbish. If you chatter less and work harder, this yard will be a much better, happier place, or something like that.
So basically, the way you're describing it is almost kind of like, Gordon James didn't want to see their slave go. Well, I mean, like, to be fair, considering what they're gonna do to Duck, basically in this story, it's not far fetched to say that, like, they kind of view Percy both like a best friend, but also both like a dog, that they kind of overuse too much.
Yeah, the same. They did the same thing with Thomas, but Thomas luckily went away before he got worse.
Basically, I guess you could say that Thomas escaped from the railway. Ah.
Ah. So Percy's kind of like mad that that nobody listens to him, and he does try hard but fails miserably when both the coaches and the trucks behave badly. And by the end of the day, he's so tired. And when he gets to the station, Sir Topham Hatt decides to give him a new opportunity to work on the new harbor, which is being rebuilt, as we said it in the previous story. And he tells him that he needs an engine to be there all the time, and Percy accepts the offer.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day, the new engine arrives, and his name is Montague, but he likes to be called Duck because he apparently waddles. Which, a fun fact, that nickname
Yeah.
came from Wilbur Autry's model of Duck.
Yes, actually. Yes. Do you want to explain a little bit about like
Yes.
how the model came about and everything, or?
Yes, apparently what happened was it was that the model was made of waddle when it moved around, and apparently the children laughed at it that they called it a duck because it waddled.
Yeah.
Kind of a funny story. Kind of a funny story
It
actually.
is, and yeah, I believe Doug is one of the few instances where like the model was made for him first before he ever became a book.
Yes, and Mavis was another example. Mavis was in the layout for years before she appeared in the books.
Huh, interesting.
Yes, Mavis was built I think in 1965, and she didn't appear in any of the books until 72.
Ah.
So yeah, that's another example. But anyways, Duck arrives and Percy shows him what to do. And meanwhile, the three big assholes, Gordon, Henry, and James, watch Duck do his work, and basically they just start bullying it.
Yeah, basically they took a look at each other and just like, fresh new meat.
Yeah, so they basically start bullying him, and then they also take him as a dog.
Yeah.
And well, the Percy and Duck get fed up with this bullshit, and they basically decide to block their way into the shed.
Basically, in a way, when you think about it, kind of go on strike in a way.
Yeah, but not to the extent as in troublesome and troublesome
Pretty much. It's just more like sticking up for themselves and everything.
pretty much. So then that I think that evening the fat controller is about to go home, but then he hears the noise in the yard and he goes to see what's going on. So what ended up happening is that Doug and Percy are blocking the three assholes his way into the shed.
The three assholes for basically entering the shed and everything until the fat controller comes in and basically
tells Doug to explain what's going on, and Doug tells him that he's a Great Western engine, and that he does his work without fuss, and that he basically reminds the fat controller that if you remind these engines that we only take orders from you. And this causes the three assholes to get furious.
Yeah. Doc pretty much had the balls to tell the Fat Controller to being like, hey, you kind of suck at doing your job. Do it better.
Yeah, and that caused the three assholes to be really furious until the Fat Controller comes back and that's with the silence.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this right here, right now. Pretty much Ringo Starr pretty much bested all of the three narrators when it came to, like, with the silence.
Yes, I agree. Nobody did it better than Ringo.
Because pretty much everyone else was just pretty much, well, silence, please. Don't make silence, please. Don't make me have to put you in a timeout. Or basically, Ringo Starr being like, you better shut the fuck up, or I won't hesitate to throw you off a cliff.
Yes. George Carlin wasn't that bad, but unfortunately, Ringo Starr did it the best. Yeah, but yeah, then the Fat Controller kind of scolds out Percy and Duck for their behavior, and this part is hilarious to me. Like the three assholes begin to snigger, but the Fat Controller points at this like, "As for you, you've been worse. You made a disturbance.
You made a disturbance. You made a disturbance. You made a disturbance. You basically made me miss my hot butter toast for this shit. How dare you?"
And while the story ends with Percy going to the harbor to work, and Duck is left to manage the yard alone. So Duck takes charge. For this being a follow-up story to the previous story, this is a great story, and I think this is a perfect introduction to Duck.
It is. It is. I definitely do agree.
This story is written so perfectly that I just can't say anything negative about it. Well, one thing negative, and that is the illustrations.
Dobby, you fucked up again. This is why we had to break up.
You fucked up badly in the illustration where Duck and Henry are confronting each other. Yeah. Wow, that is a downgrade.
Yeah, really it is.
But ironically, one of his best illustrations, period, is in this same story.
Yes. Can I take a guess of what illustration that is?
Yes, go ahead.
Is this basically the one where basically Percy is at the harbor fetching the coaches and such?
Well, that's one of them. I just say two best illustrations are in this.
I felt two. Good.
There's two best illustrations in this story. That one in the harbor and the one in the fucking station.
Oh yeah, the station.
Oh man, like that is so fucking beautiful. Like that was great.
It is. It is really good. I will admit, that is really good.
But yeah. Sorry, Dolby, but yeah. But anyway, yeah. Going back to what you were saying, yeah, yeah. It's kind of funny that he makes some great illustrations, and then he goes back to being a douchebag.
It's kind of, yeah. I mean, in a way, he's both interesting, but also kind of sad because it's kind of like can't make up his own damn mind of like he wants to try to be decent, or if he just basically wants to say like or he just basically wants to say fuck it and just draw whatever he wants to draw.
Yeah, but the illustration, okay, so this is where I'm gonna start. But the illustrations, they don't affect my rating. They don't affect my enjoyment of the book per se.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think this is another perfect story. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, I think we broke a record because this here is yet another 10.
All right. Well, that's a 20 for you so far. So basically, depending on how the next story is going to be and this might be another high book for you. This book might end up being one of your favorites.
Yeah. Okay. So I was originally gonna get the story an 8 because I felt the TV episode was much better than the book version.
Mm-hmm.
But listening to Willie Rushton and Johnny Morris's narrations and reading the story again,
mm-hmm.
I don't know. It kind of felt perfect. It kind of felt flawless. Like I couldn't think of anything negative to say. So
yeah,
that's why I give it a 10.
Yeah. Honestly, same here. Like I really can't think of too many bad things to say on the story and everything. I guess maybe like one minor complaint someone could make is that like the story might feel similar to like what the big engines were doing with like Edward and to an extent Percy and such when Percy first came into the island and everything. But at the same time and everything, now that you mention it and everything, basically this story is a really good follow up to Percy in a single, because it basically does show like basically after that incident, it's like Percy said, like no one believes him that much anymore. I think that like I basically think that like because he's too stupid or too naive, they could just basically boss him around and everything.
Which
And
is a good life,
uh, uh,
which that does happen in real life, unfortunately.
yeah, pretty much. And when you kind of think about it and everything, this book is almost kind of like in a way like teaching basically not only teaching kids but also teaching adults basically like basically basically how to stand up for yourself and everything when basically when you getting bullied slash harassed and everything. And basically kind of does show you basically shows you that like sometimes you just have to put your foot down and say that like enough is enough and everything.
Exactly, yeah. And I think the story captures that more perfectly.
Pretty much. Especially, what? It's another thing I actually do like. Basically, the scene. The more we talk about it and everything. Basically, when the Fat Controller came in and basically want to know what would happen and everything. Basically, on the one hand and everything, like he did not approve on what Percy and Duck were doing and everything. But at the same time, like he fully understand like why they were doing it to begin with and everything. And that's why like he also gave the other big three engines a good scoring as well too, because
Yeah, yeah. I think that was one of the best use of the Fat Controller in the series, in my opinion.
pretty much, because it does show that like classic series on set and everything. Yeah, I mean like the Fat Controller may like his engines very much and everything, but he doesn't really pick favors and everything. Like he has to be
He's
fair.
not biased. In other words, he's not biased.
Pretty much. Like, basically, the Fat Controller is basically not afraid to call out, like, when someone's being basically stupid or being a jerk, like, basically, like, when a situation calls for it as well, too.
Although he's strict and meticulous, favorites he has none.
Favors he has none and everything, and basically it shows it real perfectly with the scene and everything, like how he handled the situation with both Percy and Duck, and basically in a way it's kind of a little funny when I was a kid and everything. Because now keep in mind I also had like the VHS and everything. I did have the Ringo Starr version. But basically, like I had a VHS and everything, where basically they would always show this episode, but not Percy in the single, or basically like having no knowledge of the Railway series books and everything.
All right.
But basically like but basically how the end and everything when like they said like Tom had to send Percy away. Basically as a kid, I always took that to mean that like Percy also got the punishment as well too. But now that I'm reading the Railway series books and now that I got more context, in a way, I guess you could say that like maybe like Percy going away is somewhat of a punishment, but more like in a way like the Fat Controller understands that Percy has pretty much put up with enough of like the engine's harassment on him. Now like in a way that like he's sending him to the harbor to basically like give him a nice needed change and everything.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a punishment to me. I think it's a breath of
Pretty,
fresh air.
yeah, pretty much. But then again, like I said, this is coming from someone that like didn't grow up with the Railway series as well too. So I don't, so I never really had too much of a context on about like what did Ringo Starr or George Carlin mean like when they said that like Staubach had to send Percy away and everything.
I basically took it as he was sent away for being naughty. I was like, but I was like, but
Yeah,
I know he did something wrong, but come on, like the
yeah. I
three
mean, same
assholes
here.
were the ones
Uh,
that were fucking him around.
yeah. Same here and everything. Same here and everything. That's basically what I thought as well too. But yeah. Actually, should we mention this right now as well too? And that like this is actually Percy's last time I've ever been on the main line after this book.
Yes, this is yeah. Actually, I didn't even notice that this is the final time he's in the yard.
It is like in a way like it's kind of like a weird transition because like one of those where it's like if you kind of blink or if you don't think too hard about it you won't notice it, but basically like especially in season 2 and everything, we basically went from Percy being in Tidman shares to basically now he's living with he's now living with Thomas and Toby and everything, and sometimes you're kind of like, wait, when did this happen?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like the transition was kind of fast in a certain way.
It basically was in a way because I guess like the only way I can interpret this is that like maybe like what Percy did in the final story was so good, and I basically seen that like Percy was doing such a good job at the harbor that the Fat Controller was just like, you know what, Percy, how would you like to work? How would you like to work at Thomas's branch line permanently?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I will admit the transition is definitely needed some improvement, but but because the story is is flawless, I'll give it a pass. The story was flawless. That if you don't think too much, if you don't think too hard about the transition, it's a perfect.
It is. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, it is a really good story. I really can't think of too many flaws with this story as well too. Now I will admit, I don't know if I would go back to the story all too much and everything, but the way it's structured and everything is still really good. In a way that like it's one of those stories where it's like I really don't mind reading it again from time to time. So, you know what? I am feeling generous today. Yeah. You know what? I'm feeling generous today. I'll also give it a 10. Why not?
Yes, your first 10
So,
for this book.
yes.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention about the TV episode.
Go ahead.
Quack quack.
Actually, you know, okay. So, at least in terms of that transition and everything, basically George Carlin does it best because, like, you know, it's so really random and kind of funny as well too. Especially when he does it again in sheds and that, like, you know, not and that, like, you know, he kind of went from being a duck to being like a pig and such.
Yes.
That was just kind of out of nowhere and such.
The other narrator, so I wasn't very, I was like, what the fuck? Are you trying to be Donald Duck? Because only George Carlin can do that scene.
Well, honestly, I think Ringo Starr actually nails the scene as well, pretty well as well, pretty good as well too, in my opinion. Like, you know, he still makes it funny in a way.
Yeah, he does still make it funny, but it's kind of a little weird. It's like, are you trying to be Donald Duck for some reason?
Well, I mean, like, Duck is the
But
duck, so.
nothing tops. Whee!
Swish!
I love. You know what I love about that scene? That Percy is smiling while Doug is like, Percy.
Percy, what's that grin for? And Percy's just like, Duck, have you ever wanted to see an innocent green talking cupcake one commit murder? And Doug's just like, no. Good, because I'm gonna do it anyway.
But yeah, that's all I have to say for Duck Taste Charge. It's a fun story.
Same here. All right, so far you got
But
a
I'll be
20, I
honest.
got a 19.
But I'll be honest. But I'll be honest. Sorry to cut you off
Go
again.
ahead.
This is the only story in the book that I'm a little bit burnt out on it because
Yeah,
I've
I
seen
mean,
episodes.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, this story and the next story and everything, these two stories are basically what makes Percy the Small Engine, and for good reason too. Like, because especially the next story and everything, these two basically make the book on what it is and everything. And to be fair, to a lesser extent, like the last story also makes the book for what it is as well.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, this is the only story that I'm a little bit burnt out on the book. But
Mm-hmm.
it's still a perfect story. Without taking account the burnout factor.
Pretty much. All
All
right.
right, the big
Alrighty then,
one.
yes, let's go ahead and do this. Percy and Harold. Percy and
Shall,
Harold
shall
and
I,
the
shall
Nut.
I take it off? Shall I take it off?
Okay, go ahead. You do it.
One, two, three, four.
Said
Said Harold the helicopter
helicopter
to
to
our
our
Percy,
Percy,
you
you
are
are
slow.
slow.
Your
Railway
railway
is
is
out of
out of
date,
date and
not
not
much
much
use
use
you
you
know.
know.
But
But
Percy with a
Percy and the
stone
stone
truck took
truck
the
to the
trip
trip
in
in
record
record time,
time.
and we
And
beat the
we beat the
helicopter on our own
helicopter on
branch
our
line.
own branch line. So yeah, that's basically basically that's one version of putting the story in a nutshell. The other nutshell version of the story is basically Thomas and Birdie Part Two, but now it's basically with a caterpillar and a helicopter.
Yes. So
And
you want to tell the summary? By the way, I just wanted to make.
honestly, I think this is one of the few stories where basically that song alone just basically sums up the whole story in a nutshell and everything.
Yeah, actually, about that song, remember that I said that there was a fun fact that I was gonna leave onto one of the stories. Well, this is it.
Alrighty, go ahead.
Okay, so apparently Wilbur was having trouble writing the song for the story that he consulted with one of the organists at the at his parish church,
Uh huh.
and apparently the rhyme was not very well received by parents. They told Wilbur that it was pretty lame and it needed some work, and I will agree. Yes,
Yeah.
it's not that good, you know.
Yeah, it's not that good, but at the same time, it actually does capture about regular people sometimes seeing their way to victory and such.
Yeah, I think the TV episode does it the best because they fix the problem with the rhyme and they actually fit some words for it.
Honestly, both Ringo Starr and George Carlin really nailed that song perfectly.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Johnny Morris and Willie Rushton. I'm sorry, guys, but no, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of like railway series narration, yeah, I'm leaning more towards on Willie and everything. Just more on like how he hit that high note on like the last section of the song and everything.
With Percy the Strong doesn't achieve record time, that line?
Yeah.
Okay. I know Johnny Morris has a higher range than Morris, but
I mean, to be fair, like to be fair, I think Johnny also did his best a little bit, but yeah, like you, like when we got a little towards the end, he kind of lost me a little bit, to be honest.
how so? Out of
It's
curiosity.
I don't know. It's just a way to like he kind of delivered the same voice in terms of like when we got near the end and everything. I was kind of like, I mean to be fair, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. Like I do give at least an A for effort for both of them and everything with the song overall.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So
Yeah. Oh, I think Ringo and George did it the best.
yeah, and you know what? To be honest, my review is probably gonna be short and sweet to the point. Cause again, this is another story where I really can't think of too many flaws to say about it. I mean,
I
I
have
mean to be
no
fair,
flaws
much like
with the
Bonnie and
story.
everything, this story also does suffer from burnout because again, much like Thomas and Birdie and everything, this is another story a lot of people think about when they think about classic Thomas and everything. And basically, you know what? It's for a good reason and everything. So at least going to like book version wise and everything. Basically, the way Wilbur captures the race scene from beginning to end, it's really good. And basically, when you read it by yourself and everything, again, much like with Thomas and Birdie, you feel the excitement in that race from basically beginning to end, and basically with the way on how Wilbur is describing the action and how the race is going along, it makes it for a really fun race. It really does. Basically, you know what? Props to also Dobby and everything. The illustrations he did for that race, again, fantastic. Really fantastic. My favorite illustration is basically the one where you see Harold fly right above Percy and you see him basically out aerial view and everything. That was done really well. That was done really well, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. I agree. My favorite is the one where Percy's at the Harper and you have to look very closely at this, but Harold has a frown on his face, like
Yeah,
fuck.
you do,
God damn it.
yeah, you do see it and everything, and then when we get to the CGI series and everything, I'm actually kind of looking forward to seeing like how basically how they recreated that story in that one episode in CGI and
Oh
everything.
yes, yeah. That's actually one of my favorite Thomas episodes ever.
Oh, nice.
Ever.
All right, well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting to that episode whenever we get around to it.
But yeah, you have to look very closely to look at Harold's frown. And I'll say right now, Harold is a big asshole in this story because he's the type.
I mean, he is, but I mean, like, okay, but I mean, like, to be fair, like, but I mean, like, to be fair, who isn't an asshole in this universe?
Yeah, Percy was just trying to give him a compliment. It's like, what worldly great arms you got? He was trying to say a
And Harold's
compliment.
just like, fuck you, they're nice arms, you little green caterpillar.
But yeah, Harold is a big asshole in this story. But
I mean, well, I mean, like, to be fair and everything, like, in a way, Harold does have a point in that, like, because again, this was at a time when, like, helicopters. I mean, people sometimes forget, but like, but basically, like, air vehicles were still fairly new, during this time period and everything.
yeah, and flying in airplanes didn't become mainstream until I believe the 70s. I think.
Well, at least in terms of like in America and everything, basically like airline travel literally just started in the 50s. In terms of like in America and everything, like to some people and everything, they would see like stuff like airplanes and helicopters really cool compared to trains and everything. There probably are some people out there that think that like that basically think that like airplanes and helicopters are much more faster than trains and everything.
And they're right. Airplanes are very fast.
They are and so like so basically like it's not really far fetched to see basically where Harold's rudeness is coming from towards Percy and such.
Yeah, even in the Thomas wiki, I read on the wiki when he was first introduced, he was very proud of his ability to fly. So
Pretty much. I mean, to be fair, that is an ability to be proud of in a way.
yeah, but yeah, like it's interesting. Like Jetstream didn't become mainstream in the United States until the 70s,
Yeah.
because wow, it took them that
It
long.
is like I said, sometimes people forget. Like I said, sometimes we forget on like just how basically just how fairly recent some of the stuff we take for granted now. Like it's still it's still fresh and new in a sort of way.
I agree. I agree.
But
So
yeah,
anyway,
like I said, I really don't have too much bad to say about it. And I will say, like, the TV series, once again, the TV series, like what they did with Thomas and Birdie and everything, they really captured that race also very well, too, especially with the camera shots and everything, and, like, the music and such. Again, they make that race just so much fun. Arena, on your own. Like I said, it is hard to find a flaw with the story and everything, because, like, the story is just fun from beginning to end and everything. Like I said, I guess the only flaw I can give it is maybe just like the burnout and everything, just because of like, just basically like how overplayed the story is today and such. But reading it and everything is still fun. I can't think of anything bad to say. So you know what? I'm giving the story a 10. It deserves it. It basically
yeah,
deserves a solid 10.
no arguing with you on there. This story for me is a 10 as well.
All right,
This,
you're
this
giving
might
it a
sound
30.
this might sound blasphemy.
But go ahead.
This might sound blasphemy, but I think the book version is better than the TV episode. The reason is because the TV episode cuts a lot of what the story offers and cuts a lot of
Yeah.
funny scenes in the story.
Yeah. I think I know. I think I know what you're talking about. Like, cause to see when the guard lead, because to see when the guard also like joining in and having fun with the race. That one was also pretty fun too.
It's a shame they cut it out because in my opinion, when the driver
Yeah.
says, "Well, I'll be a ding dong dad," I was like, "Yeah, that doesn't make any sense." And then I
Yeah.
read the book version. I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So that's where it was coming from
But
because
hey,
of the.
but hey, you know what also doesn't make sense in the TV series version? Basically, why the fuck is Percy Striver, Ryan, and Henry now?
Okay, so now it's Henry and Harold.
Yeah. So what we learned here is that Percy can suddenly transform into Henry whenever he wants.
I was like, okay, so I didn't notice that it was Henry's cap until I got older. It's like, I was like, wait a moment, hang
Yeah,
on a moment.
yeah. Wait a moment, Henry. What are you? Basically, I can just imagine Percy being like, Henry, what are you doing here? This is my episode. And Henry's just like, oh yeah, right.
Stock footage.
Stock footage. Yes, folks. Even back then, stock footage was sometimes kind of lame.
Very lame.
Very lame. Very lame. But it wasn't until season 7 that I got even lamer.
But it was understandable for season 7. But we discussed that plenty of times in our
Yeah,
season
pretty
7
much.
review. But yeah, the story to me is flawless. Like I can't think of anything negative to say about this story. It's a
All right.
10 for me as well.
All right, so I mean, so far, like this is still a perfect streak. We have 3 stories that are 10s actually. So, well, I mean, like basically, whatever you're gonna give for like Percy's Promise, this book should at least still be like almost like a solid B in a way.
Yeah, because let's revise our scores for a little bit. You gave Percy and the Signal a 9, correct?
Yeah. So Percy and the Single, I gave a 9, and I also gave. And basically, last story I gave Duck Takes Charge a 10, and this story I also gave Percy and Harold a 10. So,
Well,
yeah. So basically, my score, my rating is is one score lower than yours.
yeah, because I gave the previous stories 10s.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
let's
you
see if
did.
the final story will make this a perfect book for me.
All right. So yeah, let's go with the last story, Percy's Promise.
And I'll take this one away.
Okay,
So
go
so
ahead.
Percy's Promise starts off with Thomas taking the vicar's Sunday school to the beach, and Thomas tells Percy that he's going to be busy this evening, so he told the station master to ask Percy to take the children home, and Percy promises to do so. And the children have a good day at the beach, but unfortunately, by the time tea time comes, dark clouds loom ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the rain starts pouring down, and the station master asks Percy to take the children home. And Percy at first, Percy kind of doesn't want to do it at first, but then he remembers a promise is a promise, and we must keep it.
Which right there, that really does show you how far Percy has come as a character.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So Percy makes his way through the storm, and this is where things get a little weird in the book version,
Yeah.
illustration wise. Because I thought he went through the flood twice, but I was like, wait a moment, he went through 2 floods? That doesn't make sense. But anyway, he gets stuck because of the rain in a
Mm-hmm.
flood, and basically the fire isn't strong enough to continue. What they do is they cut open the floorboards that the guard swept
Mm-hmm.
and put it on the fire.
Yeah.
That helps Percy a lot. But then Harold comes and drops hot drinks for them so they can
Mm-hmm.
continue. And then basically Percy makes his way into the flood, makes it to the station, and then Sir Topham Hatt compliments Percy on his bravery,
Yep.
and the story ends. Okay, so you may be saying this might be another perfect story, right? Well,
Well,
this is might be controversial to every one of you, but
I mean, we
I
don't
don't
think the
think
story is the worst and everything, but go ahead, Bonnie, take it away.
it's not that it's not bad by any means. It's just that the book version kind of makes things weird in a sort of way.
Yeah.
Because like when I was a kid, when I first read this book at 9 years old, I was like, "Wait a moment, he went through the flood twice." That I was like, and that
So
let me.
okay, yeah. So, do you want me to explain real quick about like what
Yes,
really
go ahead.
happened? All right.
Take it
So
away.
yeah. So basically, much like Bonnie and everything, I kind of almost felt the same way as well too. But then when reading the story again and looking at context, so no, what really happened is that basically Percy tried to go through the flood a little bit, and basically because it was cold and was starting to get to his fire and such, the driver and fireman basically quickly backed him away from the flood and back to dry land and everything before it got worse. So basically, when they did that, the guard went to see if there was like another route for them to take. But it turns out that the bridge to the junction and everything was closed thanks to the flood and everything. Well, actually, they never really explained why the bridge was closed. So basically, you're kind of left wondering. Basically, is it closed because of the rain, or they're doing repairs or something? They basically never really explained. But because there was no other way for them to get to the station and everything, that's when basically, in a way, there's that was one thing the TV series actually changed. But when you kind of think about it, they're kind of killing Clarabelle just to keep Percy alive and such. When
Yes.
you think about it, like I said, I could just imagine Clarabelle being like, "You better thank me for this, all right?" But yeah, that's basically where the firework came in and everything because it basically figured, oh, all right, if we're gonna have to go through the flood, we're gonna make some preparations then. And then basically, yeah, that's basically why Percy went through the flood twice and such. So basically, all right, he did went through the flood twice, but no, it wasn't like there was like multiple flood. It wasn't like there was multiple floods. It was only just that one flood that basically stopped him for a bit.
Yeah, and you know something? I just while you were talking, I was because I have the book next to me right now as we speak.
Yeah,
I was like taking a look at it, and I barely remember the bridge part. Like the book version is so unmemorable in my opinion.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. This is one of the few times, at least in terms of us, I think the TV series actually, you know what? This is one of the few times where I actually kind of glad both Britt and David decided to wait to adapt the story. I mean, continuity wise, it is weird that they skipped it and moved it to season three and everything because of a certain story that's gonna come up next in the next episode and everything. Uh,
They didn't know how to do storms and moving water. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that. It's not just that, they didn't know how to do storms and such. But they were also really thinking, okay, well, how are we gonna do, the water scene as well too? Because don't forget, season two was still made before Britt and David went their separate ways, and David went to make tugs and such. So basically, David had a choice where either do you use some kind of plastic, or do you use some kind of glass or plastic to make it look like water and such, or basically they would try to and actually make the engines go through actual water and everything.
Yeah, and there's a good example of that, and Harold is a good example because if you look back on season two and compare it with season three, Harold basically has a transparent DVD on him as the rotors,
Yeah, pretty much.
whereas in season three, he has blades are spinning around.
He does, yeah. And yeah, speaking of Harold and everything, speaking of Harold, again, going back to the TV series, the TV series actually did a much better job on basically setting Harold up for basically when he goes to rescue Percy from the flood and everything. They did a much better job
Because
when
he appears out of nowhere in this story. He appears out of nowhere. It's like,
yeah, pretty much. Pretty much, Percy was just lucky that Harold was just flying around and he spot Percy, and basically he spot Percy and was just like, oh, do I have to help him? Okay, you know what? I'm gonna have my fun with him. Here, you little green cupcake. This is for making me look bad in that race. I will say that, that at least in in the book version, there was still plenty of laughs. I will say that the whole basically the whole parachute scene was actually pretty funny in my opinion.
Yes, it is. It's very funny, I will admit. But yeah, unfortunately, this story, the book version doesn't work in my opinion for me.
Yeah, yeah,
And
same here.
talking about it more, the score has lowered for me to the point where this is gonna be controversial, but I gotta be honest with myself.
Actually, before you go, before you give your rating, let me give another reason why, at least to me, why this book doesn't work too
Yeah, take
much.
it off. Take
So,
it off. Listen to me.
so
Take it
basically,
away.
another reason why this doesn't work and everything is that, basically structure wise, it also feels weird, in a way. Okay, so at least going by structure, any opening, any intro, it's not that bad. Basically, in terms of the intro, it does a good job on like basically setting up what kind of action, or at least setting up the focus story that's basically going to take place pretty soon and everything. But it's usually the middle where it's just basically as soon as that storm scene hits and as soon as the flood hits, basically when I read that story and compare it to the TV version, in the book version it just feels like it's dragging on a little bit. In a way, it kind of just feels like Wilbur just stuck to that action scene just for so long and everything that for so long that it kind of felt not necessarily off, but basically it's like Bonnie said, this is basically the reason why people like me and Bonnie when we were kids got a little confused with the scene and everything, just because like it just went on for so long and everything. It kind of felt like the story was kind of grinding to a halt. Much like the same way the floor was grinding Percy to a halt in a
Yes.
sense.
Cause the scene where yeah, cause when they stop, it's like yeah, the story they screech the brakes just so they can have another scene with Percy.
Pretty much. It kind of just like yeah. The scene just kind of went on a little too long, just to, build up a reason as to like how they're gonna get past the flood and everything. Or basically the TV series actually structured the story well enough because again, because basically again, Britt and David actually added the time to basically set up the storm scene even more with Harold and everything, basically making Harold feel even more important than what he was in the book version as well. Although, like I said, I will admit, the TV series also has its flaws, basically, just shoehorning Edward in for no reason,
Oh
apparently.
yeah, but that's another topic. Yeah, but that's another topic.
Pretty much. Basically, by the time you get to the flood scene and everything, and the storm and everything, basically, Britt and David, and even Michael Dahl and Junior Campbell, they really handled that scene very well. They basically handled that scene from. Basically from beginning to end, it didn't feel like it was dragging on all too much. It definitely felt evenly paced and such.
Plus with that iconic soundtrack.
Pretty much. Pretty much by the time Percy does make it through the flood, much like Thomas with the children and everything, you're very happy that basically Percy made it through the day okay. The book, and I will admit, the book also does do a good job as well too with the ending as well. Like I said, it's mostly the intro and the ending that's basically saving me from calling this book, meh, meh in a sort of way, even with the ending, even with the ending, you feel really proud, for Percy for basically going through all that trouble just to keep his promise to Thomas and everything. Basically, like I said, Percy has really grown since the last three stories and everything. And this story really does show on how far basically how far he has progressed and everything. That you can't, that basically, that basically you also feel proud. You also feel proud of him when the Fat Controller praises him for basically his hard work and such.
I also find it kind of funny that Harold has no lines in the book version. It's like,
Well, I mean, he has no lines, but he says something. He did say something to the Fat Controller about being a wizard and everything. Which I will admit, the little exchange between the Fat Controller and Percy is pretty funny,
Harold,
and I definitely do love the way how the TV series captured it.
I just love this line. Like Harold told me you were a wizard,
Percy. I basically also love the added line the Fat Controller added where he basically said I don't know what you two do in your spare time, and I won't ask.
but I do know that you're a
You're a
really
really useful engine. Trademark.
Oh, sure.
Alrighty, go ahead and give your rating. I'll give my rating first.
Okay. Uh, so we were talking about this, and my score kind of went down a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, the book version is not memorable whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yes, the ending is very memorable. I will say yes, the ending and the beginning at somewhat is memorable. I will say,
Mm-hmm.
but the middle half kind of drags on to the point where I barely remember what happens in the book version, and basically the TV episode is all I have in my mind.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you know what is pretty funny? Basically, I read the story almost 3 times by myself in the book, and every time I read this book, I keep forgetting about how long that middle part was. Actually,
It's so unmemorable, to be honest.
it is actually.
You know what? It's still a pretty good story, but due to the problems, I'm gonna have to give it a
Like I
you know
said, be honest with yourself. Basically, how much would you go back to this story if you wanted to?
honestly not that much. So you know what? This story for me is a 5.
Alrighty, well that's still not bad in a way. Alrighty,
It,
so in terms of my final rating, yeah, I will have to agree with you. Is that in that like I said, while in a way this is a good ending to the book, the TV series really does do this story much better justice and such. That basically it's just one of those stories where it's like every time I do read it, I like you, I also forget about that middle part and everything. And yeah, thinking long and hard about it, I'm gonna be a little more generous. But yeah, my score also has lowered it to basically a 6.
okay.
So well, hey, actually, you know what? Basically, if I added the score together, we're tied actually, in terms of rating.
Okay, so
We're
let's
tied.
let's go to the final scores and check it out.
Alrighty, so basically, your final score because you gave all 3 stories minus this one a 10, and so basically 30 plus 5, you got a 35 out of 40, and it's the same thing with me. I also got a 35 out of 40. So basically, our final ratings to our Percy the Small Engine is going to be a B plus. Actually, it still end up being a B overall.
Wow.
I'm proud of this score actually, because you know what, yeah, reading this book again, minus the final story and everything. This is almost a near perfect book for Percy when you think about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a 9 out of 10 for the both of us.
Yeah,
Speaking of,
yeah, pretty much and such. Like mostly when you think about it, this book is kind of like Thomas in a sort of sense. But it's actually much different enough that basically there's no reason. There's basically it's no reason to wonder why. Like Percy is still a fan favorite character to this day.
yes, yeah, man, I enjoyed this book. The first time I read this book, I enjoyed it. Second time I read it, I also enjoyed it. And
Same here. You know what? Honestly, like when we were getting this book, I was kind of getting ready to like basically much like with Edward the Blue Engine. Basically I was actually getting ready to also praise the book, but I didn't think I was going to praise it that much. But basically, when talking about these stories and everything, especially the first three really nail Percy's character so well that it's basically hard for like the both of us to find any flaws with the first 3 stories. So like I said, we gotta give props to Wilbur. Like he really did a good job on capturing Percy in this book.
I agree. And as for the final book, illustrated by oh wait, this is the final book for two things actually.
Oh yes, actually yes. Yes. Not only is this the final book in terms of like Dalby's illustrations, but this is the final book where we're gonna talk about Johnny Morris.
Yeah, so you want to take it away with your final thoughts on Johnny Morris, since this is
Sure.
his final book?
All right. So Johnny Morris and everything. Like I said, when I first listened to Johnny Morris, I was basically one of those people that did not like him at first, mostly because of like the sound effects and everything. The sound effects did get on my nerves the first time I listened to him and everything.
I
But
don't blame you. I don't blame you whatsoever.
yeah. As soon as we started, doing this podcast and everything, and basically listening to his narrations, he did grow on me. He really did grow on me, both as a narrator, cause basically, that dude can actually read a book. Basically, he can narrate so well, and basically the way, like he gives each engine their own voices to match their personalities and such. I basically will admit, especially in the last story and everything, sometimes it works, and then there's other times where it's like it doesn't really fit the engines all that much. But basically for the most part and everything, the voices he gives for some of the engines are actually really good in my opinion. But yeah, in terms of like Johnny Morris and everything, I think he did a really good job with the Railway series overall and everything. But I do agree with Barney and everything. I think it was actually the right time that now we move on to a new narrator to basically take over for Morris and basically try his luck with the Railway series and everything.
Yes. Yeah, and I basically fall into the same category as you. The first time I heard Johnny Morris as a kid, I was 9 years old when I first heard him.
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoyed it. I actually enjoyed a little bit of his narrations. There were others that I did not enjoy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And before we started this podcast, I was one of the ones that yeah, like he said, there were some stories that I love his narration, and there were others where I was like, get the fuck away from me.
uh,
But I will say the first 8 books are his highlight as a narrator,
mm-hmm.
whereas nine through 10 they were terrible in my opinion.
Yeah.
11 was a massive improvement, but I will admit it was time that he moved on and we got a new narrator.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he did a solid job with the first 8 books. But you know,
Yeah.
it was time. It was time.
It was. I think we did already gave our thoughts on like Dalby as a whole, but just in case that we didn't, do you want to go first
Yeah,
about what you thought about Dalby overall?
let's just give some final thoughts on Dolby for the
All
one
right. All right.
in case for the ones that haven't seen, that have just joined us for season 2,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're a new viewer, welcome first of all. But yeah, if you haven't seen season 1, we highly recommend you go back and see it.
Mm-hmm.
But for C. Reginald Dolby, there were some times where I was like, where I was looking at his illustration, I was thinking to myself,
How the fuck were you
wow,
hired?
that why the fuck were you hired? Because man, some of the illustrations he did were so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, especially with James the Red Engine and everything. Like, yeah, it's just, yeah.
That illustration where James and Edward are climbing the hill, they look like they're taking a goddamn shit.
Yeah, and then for some reason, like he basically made the engines look like they were wearing black lipstick.
Yeah, and sometimes they would be small, sometimes they would be big.
And then sometimes it looked like they got squished.
Yes. Oh, and also, this never happens again. But he created the infamous Henry's
Yeah,
trapped
twice actually. He did twice.
twice. Yeah, but there were some highlights of his time, like the illustration of Thomas and Gordon going back to the shed.
Yeah,
That was one of
yeah.
his best illustrations. Period.
Agreed.
There was also the illustration where the engines are whistling at the Queen at the very end of Paint Pots and Queens,
Mm-hmm.
even though that story was a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And on this book as well, like the illustration where Percy's in the station and Percy taking the coaches,
Mm-hmm.
the final illustration of Percy's promise,
Yeah.
and also Old Iron. You know, that illustration of the chase scene, that was
Mm-hmm.
one of his best highlights. And Peter Sand crossing the forest, that's another great one.
Agree. And then basically the races between Thomas and Bertie and Percy and Harold, most of
That's
them were
another,
still pretty good as well too.
yeah, that's another good one. And that's oh no, Flying Kipper, like Perry pulling the
Oh
Kipper.
yeah, the Flying Kipper. The Flying Kipper is still a masterpiece in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. And that's pretty much it for Dolby. Like Dolby, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm glad we're moving on to my favorite illustrator
Yeah,
of the
same
series
here.
in the next book,
Yeah,
because it was time to go as well for Dolby.
yeah.
But yeah, you have any final thoughts on Dolby?
Not too much. You basically pretty much you basically pretty much covered everything I wanted to say as well too. Basically, after reading these Railway series books and everything for a while and everything, yeah, yes, I will admit that, like, now listening to, like, other people's opinions on Dalby and everything, and basically taking a look at, like, his work and everything as well too. I will admit there were definitely some parts where basically Dalby really could have improved a lot and everything, especially with like his illustrations and such. But like I said, but at the same time, like you said, basically when the illustration works, they really work very well, and like he could still be a good artist and such. But yeah, in terms of me, I don't really have too much to say on him. Like I said, like there was a reason why most of the characters from the TV series looked the way they did, because like Dolby was there from the beginning with like the first 8 books by the time season 1 was basically ready to be published and everything, or at least season 1 was ready to air and such. So I mean, like in a way, we do have to give basic credit to Dolby and everything for basically giving us the engines that we know and love to this day.
Actually, he died. Actually, he died a year before the TV series began airing.
Huh, interesting.
He died in 1983.
Interesting.
But yeah, the TV series was in production by the time he died. But yeah, like I agree. Like as much as we like to give a lot of shit for to Dolby because of his arrogance and his I don't give a fuck attitude towards the books.
Pretty much, yeah.
We got to at least give him credit for at least making the engine for at least inspiring the engine models we know and love today.
Pretty much.
I just wish they were taken better care of. Drayton Manor.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, to be fair, like, for as much as, like, Dolby, sometimes bad mouths the books and everything, there must have been something in it for him that basically made him want to illustrate them for almost, like, what, 10 years at this point and such?
He started in 48, I think. Yeah, he started in 48 and he finished in
Yeah,
56.
basically for 8 years. So, like, he stuck around for 8 years and everything. So I mean, like, basically, there must have been something in it for him that basically made him want to, like, basically still illustrate these books after so long.
Yeah, I guess it was the charm of the books, I think.
Probably.
But yeah, guys, this was Percy, and yeah, guys, with that was Percy the Small Engine.
This was a fun. This was still a fun book overall, from beginning to end and everything. So you know what? This is still looking pretty good. We got 3 stories so far, and so far, most of them has really met our expectations, even higher. Basically, even higher than what we thought. They were going to meet.
Yeah, so far this season has been better than season one.
Yeah,
In
same
terms
here.
of expectations, because man, we didn't start that good in season one. Because Three Railway Engines was I think that book was kind of burnt out.
Yeah. I mean, like, to be fair, yeah, and like the first season, like, there were still some good books. Like, I think the only like good books that we gave that, like, good to decent grades was like top. Basically the first two were like Thomas and such. I believe we did give. I believe we gave like a B to Henry, if I'm basically if I'm
Yes,
remembering it right.
yes.
We did. And then basically we gave Toby an A as well. So basically also, like, basically also like basically only 4 out of the 9 books that we gave like good ratings to.
But yeah, one thing I mean, this is interesting, and I think I brought it up in a previous episode of this season. Is that I find it kind of hilarious that that Gordon and James's books were awful.
Pretty
Henry's book
much,
was good.
but then once we got to like Edward and Percy and everything, basically both those books were really good.
Yes, and as much as Henry is one of the 3 assholes, his book was great. Like you can really feel
It was. Again, it's just basically again like basically like the Rarely Series Book Club said, like I mean basically the book itself was good and everything. It was just like structured weirdly in a way, but it was still good. Like, there were still really good ideas that Wilbert had and such.
Yes, I agree. And man, next episode, I am so fucking excited.
Yeah, same here. I'm kind of a little excited as well too, but a little bit for different reasons. I guess we'll spoil this a little bit, but I think I have a feeling that this next book might be the first book in a while where basically our ratings might be different.
Yeah, I have a feeling too, but I'm excited not just because of that, but because my all-time
Favorite
fucking favorite
illustrator is coming
illustrator,
up.
Mr. John
T.
Theodore
Kennedy.
Kenny. Man, I'm excited for next episode.
Same,
So guys,
same here.
so yeah, guys, this was Percy the Small Engine. You want to say something?
Not really and everything. Like I said, this book was pretty fun. I definitely had a fun time. Basically going over this book and everything, and yeah, next episode, I am definitely looking forward, to next episode, and basically who knows, basically who knows, maybe our talk on like, some of the stories in the next book, might change my mind on it a little bit, but we'll basically see.
So yeah, guys, this was Percy the Small Engine. If you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast, don't forget to hit the like button.
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys want to see more episodes of the podcast, hit that subscribe button as well. Also, don't forget to check out our separate channels, OT-7 for me and Sequoia Diesel for Sequoia. Both channels will be linked in the description below. And so with that, guys, we'll be seeing you guys next week for the 8 famous engines. So with that,
Technically, 7 famous engine. The 8 engine, he just started his own book. He's not really all that famous yet.
yeah, pretty much. So yeah, guys, this has been Bonnie with
So, Corey the Diesel.
saying thank you for watching, and we'll be seeing you guys next week for the 8 famous engines. Take care, guys, and we'll be seeing you guys in the next episode.
Bye bye.